Hello, this is Mr. Stansbury. I'm going to take you through the 6J notes on negative bases. Okay. At the end of this, you should be able to translate and find values of negative numbers raised to various different powers. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. Excuse me. So, first one, let's take a look at example 28 from page 190. And it says to evaluate all these things here. So, first one they have is negative 2 to the fourth power. So what this really means is, if you were to write this all out, not that you have to, but just so that you know what's going on, we take negative 2, and we're really writing it, 4 times, right? So it's negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is also 4. And when you go 4 times 4, it's 16, right? Or, on your handy-dandy calculator, you could do this. And a lot of people like to do this. They say, oh, I'm just going to do negative 2 to the fourth power. And they say, hey, wait a minute, I get negative 16 instead of positive 16. Okay? The reason why you get negative 16 instead of positive 16 is because what the calculator is doing here, it's taking 2 to the fourth power, which is 16, and then at the very end multiplying it back by negative 1. So when you write it like that, type it like that into your calculator really sees this. Negative 2 to the fourth, the calculator sees this as this negative as negative 1 times 2 to the fourth. So again, it's going to do order operations. It's going to do 2 to the fourth first, 16, and then multiply it back by negative 1. That's why when you do this on the calculator, you've got to put that in parentheses. Negative 2 to the fourth gives us 16. That will get you the right answer. Alright? So, let's go on to example B. Negative 2 to the fourth. Now, again, what you're doing is you're doing 2 to the fourth, which is 16, and then you're patching that negative onto the end. So that would just be negative 16. Okay? Because again, the way, let's go back and write that the way we did this one here. So it's really negative, and then you have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is negative 16. Alright, hopefully you can see the difference there. That's the whole point of this 6J here, is figuring out the difference between the, basically taking negative numbers to powers. Yeah. So on this one here, we really have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times another negative 2. Okay? So again, feel free on this one if you really want to. You can excuse me, stick this in your calculator if you want, but again, make sure you do it right. Negative 2 to the fifth gives us negative 32. Okay? Now, we're probably going to get some people that say, hey, wait, that's the same thing as if I just did negative 2 to the fifth. Look, either way you get the right answer. But again, the reason why that is because you've got negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 gives us your 16, and then you multiply that by another negative 2, and you're going to get your negative 32 back. So when you get those odd powers, when you get a negative number to an odd power, that negative will stay. If you get a negative number to an even power, then that negative is going to go away because they cancel each other out. Okay? Last one is negative and then negative 2 to the fifth. Okay? So really this is negative. We just calculated what negative 2 to the fifth was, and that's negative 32. So negative 32 is 32. Alright? So again, this negative to the fifth power leaves us with a negative, and then you have to switch that. Well, a negative times a negative gives you your positive. Alright? Okay. Let's look at some more examples. Let's look at example 29 from page 191. Find using your calculator. So 6 to the fifth. We can do that. 6. And again, your power button is this up arrow to the fifth. Gives us 7776. On some of your calculators, if you're using a scientific calculator, instead of this little up arrow here, we call it the caret. So instead of that, you might have this, y to the x, or you might have x to the y, or something like that. Usually it's one of these three things. There's a few other calculators that have some different things on there, but those are the three main ones when you're looking for powers. All right? So let's do -5 to the 4th, and again, make sure you put it into the calculator just like it looks. So parentheses -5, and make sure you don't put the minus sign, make sure you put the negative sign. -5 to the 4th. Before I hit equals, since it's an even power, I know that my answer is going to be positive because I know that those every two negatives cancel out to make a positive, so I get positive 625. Okay? -7, negative, and then 7 to the 4th. So let's do that. No parentheses needed, so -7 to the 4th. 7 to the 4th is going to give me a positive number, and then I'm going to multiply that back by negative, so I know that my answer is going to be negative. And you get -2401. Alright? Hopefully this is making good sense. Let's check one last set of examples, and then we'll call it good. Alright, example 30 from page 191. Find using your calculator. 5 to the -2nd. So clear. 5 to the -2nd. Gives us 0.4. Now, also, just in case you didn't know, on your graphing calculator, I'm going to turn this into a fraction because it's going to help us better understand what this is doing here. Okay. So to turn this into a fraction, you just hit the math button, and it says, it's got a little arrow and then fraction. So basically what that's saying is it's going to turn your answer into a fraction. So you hit enter, and it says, you want to turn your answer into a fraction? Yes, we do. So it's math, enter, enter. And that is 1/25. Okay, so 0.4 or 1/25 is what that is. Let's try this one here, 1/5 squared. So I'm going to do 1 divided by, and I'm just to make sure that I get the 5 squared in there. We should be okay, but you know, we should be good. So 5 squared also gives us 0.4, excuse me. 1 divided by 5 squared. Again, order operations is gonna, the calculator follows order operations, so it's gonna do 5 squared first, and that's 1/25, or 0.4, like it gave us on our calculator. So these end up being the exact same thing. So again, this is actually coming up right in the next section. It's kind of leading you into that, which is great. Both of these are the same thing, so we know that 5 to the -2nd is the same thing as 1/5 squared. Okay, so again, just a quick preview of what's coming up in the next section. Wherever you get a negative exponent, what you can do is you can take that negative exponent, and then you can move the whole thing to the denominator and switch that exponent back to positive. Okay, so again, similar idea, x to the -3rd is the same thing as 1/x to the +3rd, right? 10 to the -5th is 1/10 to the +5th, and so forth and so on. Okay? So, they're really only asking for this on this section here, but again, this here is going to really help out in the next section that we're going to hit. Okay? That's all there is for this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks.